And this is Cinebinge Log 5. As always, we're just going through the movies I watched this week, trying to articulate my feelings about them in about a minute, minute and a half, whatever it ends up being. Trying to get a bit more of a consistent look going on here, so hopefully that goes well. But we're going to get right into the last movie I watched, just because it's fresh on my mind, Nashville. And this is a movie that critics just freak out about. I mean, it's on all kinds of lists, but then among the general audiences, nobody has seen this movie. And I think that speaks to it a little bit because I wasn't all that impressed. Now, for one, the movie insists that you must be 100% invested from the very beginning if you want to fully understand it. And it's not necessarily interesting enough to merit that kind of commitment. This movie kind of reminded me of Magnolia, but now for Magnolia is a fantastic movie, and I don't want to put this on the same level. But the idea is you just have all of these stories kind of going on at once, and it creates an atmosphere of chaos. But where Magnolia has all of these individual scenes, which I felt like were absolutely fantastic, and it's got really great direction, it's got great shot composition, things to draw you in if you're having a hard time following all these wacky interrelated stories. This movie is kind of bland, even as more an adult than I ever have been up until this point. This movie confused the hell out of me. Even looking up things after having watched the movie, I'm having a hard time coming up with some kind of moral, some kind of theme that brings everything together. And I guess the whole idea is you were just supposed to really enjoy all of these characters. And this movie is absolutely jam-packed full to the point of absurdity. I will say it's ambitious. I will say that it's interesting, and there's kind of this novelty to a film that is just so dense, so layered, that you have to watch it multiple times if you want to understand everything that goes on. But there's nothing to draw me in and give me some kind of desire to do so. So one day, I imagine I'll revisit this. Maybe I'll like it more then. But as for now, I'm not all that excited about Nashville. Also watched Peter Sellers in Being There, which, brief synopsis, if you haven't seen the movie, basically it's about Peter Sellers, who is getting up there in years. He's a little bit older than, Dr. Strangelove Peter Sellers, but he has lived his entire life as the gardener for this rich guy, and he's never been allowed to leave the home. So, rich guy dies, he's out on the streets, and a series of humorous events occur. This movie is certainly interesting. I'll give it that, and it has some good ideas behind it. There's a lot of well-executed elements of this film, but it doesn't really work for me just as a movie. The idea behind it feels very Forrest Gumpy, but Peter Sellers in this movie is no Forrest Gump. Not that he's a poor actor, just his character that he's portraying is so bland. And that's part of the movie, but it just detracts from the enjoyment of the film. Throughout the whole movie, he's so apparently an older man with the mentality of a child that anyone who doesn't immediately see through it, you feel like it's an absolute idiot. And in the end, the whole movie makes you feel the way you do after someone says something really stupid and you don't want to say anything just to be polite. But it's not like it's strong enough that you could say, hey, this movie is really having an effect on me. It's just kind of there. So if you're interested in this movie, if some of the things I've talked about have piqued your interest, then I'm not going to say actively stay away from this movie, but I wasn't all that impressed and it kind of fell flat for me. Watched a Russian science fiction film from the 70s called Solaris, which, if you're not into the whole Criterion Collection thing, then those are all red flags. You gotta be in a certain mood for this one. And while it does have some of the issues of Nashville, I enjoyed this movie a little bit more. It's adapted from a novel, and I think it's fair to say that the story suits that medium better, but there also are some interesting directorial choices. There's a lot to dissect about this film, but again, it probably would have made a better book. Also a little limited by the era in which it was made. So gonna check out the remake eventually. See if a faster pace, some better special effects fix things up, but keeping modest expectations. For the first time, I watched South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. Let me just say that Team America World Police has a special place in my heart. I really like that movie, and while it's not perfect, there's a lot that I admire about that film, and that translates to the show South Park. And in preparation to watch this movie, I actually watched all of the episodes that preceded the release of the film. And after doing that, I can say that South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut is a really good episode of South Park. I will say that this movie is freaking hilarious. I laughed a lot, and there were a lot of moments that were hysterical or really intelligent, but as a whole, it's just kind of okay. While it's cool to see a movie go places where most people are afraid to, I think they cross a few lines here, and I can understand why some people might be offended by this movie. And this movie only strengthened my suspicion that Matt Stone and Trey Parker all along have only wanted to make Terrence and Phillip a thing, and they're just kind of settling for South Park. Again, just kind of the narrative structure feels like a 20-minute episode. And they throw in the musical numbers, which are a lot of fun. They throw in a few more jokes. They up the production value. But at the end of the day, you're kind of like, that's it. It's, the ending's a little sloppy, a little rushed, and even then, at the same time, I'd say the movie feels a little overlong. Last movie, I watched The Diving Bell and the Butterfly. Hands down, best movie I watched this week. Foreign film, I believe it's in French. It's about a man who became completely paralyzed other than one of his eyes, which he could move and blink, and essentially he writes a book, which is an incredible story, but I mean, is that something that's worth making a movie? The way they do it? Yeah, this is a really well done movie. I love how they get inside his head. And a good portion of the movie takes place from the first person perspective. And in doing that, I was like, okay, this is really good. And I definitely understand his circumstance now. This is awful. But I was really worried about them being able to transfer outside of that perspective. And when it finally happens and they move outside his head, I didn't even notice. Some really neat uses of music, some poetic passages from, I assume, from the book that he wrote. I really dug the idea that he felt, the paralyzed man, that is, kind of sexually repressed, and they didn't push that. But if you pay attention to the movie, there's definitely that element to it, and it feels very genuine. Really well handled movie. Really great movie. I'd recommend it. I'm not going to say it's perfect, because at the end of the day, it is just a guy sitting in a chair, blinking, and there's only so much you can say with that. But this is an exceptional film. And that's week 5. Trying to get a little bit more of a consistent look going on here, figuring out what the heck I'm doing. So thanks for watching, but for now, I'm afraid this is